to jobs now. We're wondering how that makes your investment case perhaps easier or more nuanced on today's numbers. 5.6% at the headline level for unemployment in October. Surged, though, back into full-time roles. Was that just some payback? Or can we say with any confidence, Simon Mayer, founder and chief executive, Future U Executive Recruitment, that it is part of any trend?
Hey, Carson. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Look, I think it's reflective of the season, Carson. You know, I said it a few months ago. This is peak time for headhunters, and you know, the full-time stats reflect it. Look, it won't show it again in the next 3 months because we're going to be into our dark side of the moon territory over Christmas. But it does bode well. You know, when the market does come back and the headhunting season recommences in February next year, it does bode well in terms of first half of 2017.
And where have you been seeing a breakout in interest? Or, you know, just talk to the sectors, the hot versus not.
Yeah, look, I think we talk a lot about geographic trends, but let's move away from that and think about the sectors. It's a really good point. And I'm sort of breaking the market in executive recruitment terms into two phases at the moment. So sort of large end of town, not a great deal going on. You know, most organisations pretty cautious around total headcount. If they're making a change or they're bringing someone in, it's because someone's on the way out. So their top line stats on headcount are pretty flat. But it's the SME market that's really powering things. And the sectors to note, e-commerce, the digital sphere, services-orientated companies supporting that, really firing. And you guys might be surprised, but a lot happening in FMCG and retail. So lots of new ventures kicking off in that space that we've supported in the last couple of months.
Is it too basic to be putting this down to what it might appear that SMEs are now starting to plan for growth? One of the things this economy of ours has been missing has been a broad-based injection of business investment. So if businesses are starting to think about growing, they start about how do they grow and who they need to help them grow. Clearly those CapEx numbers that we saw last month were certainly better than anyone had been anticipated, and services was a growth of about some 3%. Is that what we're seeing in that SME interest?
Yeah, and you won't see it on the market either because it's really coming from support from high net worth individuals who are cashed up and you know, have a theory or have seen something that they want to invest in. The private equity guys equally are also throwing some money around. So it's a lot of companies that are at early start mode. You know, I'll give you an example. We've been working with a company called Nextborough Beverages, which you know, is just starting their explosive growth. You know, 2 founders putting in the executive team around them. You know, that's an example of how early it is, but there's lots of that unfolding across Sydney and Melbourne at the moment.
And Simon, yesterday wages data showed that wages growth has continued to slow. It's still in positive territory, I should point out, but has continued to slow and in fact was the lowest reading in around 20 years on an annualised basis. Does that surge in full-time jobs today speak to that wages growth scenario? Does it provide an inflection point? Could we see a turn up in wages growth from here?
Yeah, look, maybe. I mean, it's you know, we always look at it in supply and demand. So if the candidate volume's strong and there's not that many opportunities, it's going to keep base packages you know, fairly flat. I think the overall orientation in the market is to really try and think very carefully about base levels and keep it capped. And I've said this before, you know, where organisations are prepared to pay is where they see performance and bonus return. I caught up with a couple of CEOs yesterday, you know, in the context of their businesses, and they will pay some bonuses, you know, in sectors like FMCG as we come up to Christmas. But if I was looking at it in a 10-year trend, you know, the bonuses that we'll see in the market this year reflect, you know, still pretty tight conditions, you know, in terms of how most organisations are trading, particularly at the big end of town.
Yeah, the battle for talent going across continents, across geographical divides. I'm looking at numbers out of the UK. Wages rising at 2.4%. Now they're rising here, if you're lucky, at just on 1.9%.
Yeah.
So, and if anyone says that cost of living is more expensive there, they are wrong. They are wrong. They are wrong. So on that measure, how do you entice people to stay here?
That's a really good question, and probably the other way of looking at it, Carson, is how do we attract more talent into this market to diversify, you know, the thought, the IP, and the ability to grow some of these new startup businesses and SMEs. So, you know, we talk all the time about that. You know, I think the UK, you know, Brexit, did it really allow Aussie companies to get over there and find talent? Not really. You know, like that situation has settled down and quite isolated with regard to City only. You know, most of the businesses that we know commercially in the UK are still in reasonable shape, and they're playing a protective game in terms of talent. So the Aussie and Kiwi influx that we thought that we might have seen, you know, probably hasn't really eventuated. And that's a challenge here because our talent base is too narrow. You know, we don't have enough spread in terms of people coming through, and you know, that's an issue for the business community in both Sydney and Melbourne.
Simon, argy-bargy is arguably Canberra's greatest export, but did you read any significance into this week's argy-bargy around 457 visas?
Yeah, I've been asked that question about 15 times this week. It's one that's close to my heart because, you know, 457's actually power diversity and talent and allow international expertise to enter into this market and contribute. And actually, you know, what no one ever comments about is how many of those 457 visas convert into permanent residency here. So we keep the talent here and they contribute to our economy measured over 5 to 10 years. Now, of course, I'm thinking of it from a professional perspective. I think a lot of the argy-bargy this week was really associated with trades and industrial labour. So, you know, very, very different market. But if you're thinking about it in professional terms, you know, we should be thinking outside the box in terms of attracting and supporting international talent, not trying to turn it away.
Because, I mean, even to that piece on industrial, you've got the problems across the Tasman now and the war for talent on even that type of a rebuild. Again, where does that leave project pipelines here and the ability to stay within budget?
Yeah, it's not agile thinking in talent terms. You know, it's old school thinking, and you know, quite frankly, we need to address that.
Let's go geographically as well. Noticing at the headline level, WA looks again unable to shake this sorry situation it finds itself in. What kind of green shoots? Horrible expression. Any green shoots though outside the two main markets? If so, what are you looking at?
A little bit of growth in the SME space coming out of Queensland. You know, a little bit more happening up in Brisbane. We're actually up there next week, seeing 5 fairly early organisations in terms of headcount growth in the exec space. Yeah, look, unfortunately, nothing favourable to report in WA. Maybe a little bit within their public sector. You know, a little bit of movement in talent into the government ranks out of some of the commercial spheres, but. You know, like trying to cross from a mining and resources-led talent market to a broad, diversified talent market is tough going, guys. You know, and that's the issue there.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that is probably where we will put it to bed. But I want to thank you as always. This time every month, Simon joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon. There, Simon Mayer, founding chief exec as well of Future You Executive Recruitment.